Good evening and welcome to Bland Gaming's A Night at the Opera review by Delta Green. Thanks for tuning in to the most boring and technically inept channel on the internet. I'm your host, Deeb, for a very late night review of A Night at the Opera by Delta Green. Night at the Opera is a beautiful hardcover scenario book. It's got 6 very well written scenarios in it. Want to disclaimer right now, this is your one warning. If you're a player, get out. Go find something else to do. Go paint some miniatures. Go play a little bit of Xbox, whatever you got to do. But get out of here right now because this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. I'm going to be going over the scenarios kind of briefly. I'm not going to go in detail about them. There is one dude out there on the interweb with a silky smooth English accent who goes through every single one of these scenarios in great detail. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give an overall review of the product in general and then give you a brief synopsis of what each scenario was about and what I liked about the scenarios and what I didn't like about the scenarios. So anyway, given the fact that this is a bland gaming review, drink of the evening here. So where I live out right now, whoops, I almost spilled that. Can you see that? That was almost the biggest party foul because this is Cabernet Sauvignon and this is light-colored carpet. That was almost a horrendous accident, and this is my house Baratheon coaster. That was almost the biggest of party fouls here live on the interweb. You guys almost witnessed it. So, oh, the horror. Oh, the humanity of it all. Okay, so let's talk about A Night at the Opera. I'm assuming that you are familiar with the setting of Delta Green, which involves a government conspiracy combating with the characters play federal agents employed by federal agencies, and they're actively acting against the Cthulhu mythos. So A Night at the Opera, where the title comes from, is that is a slang term for a mission. So when a Delta Green operator goes on a mission, they call it, took a night at the opera, everything. So let's talk about the scenarios here. For one, the book itself, much like all the other Delta Green products, it's very high quality, it's beautiful, it's got some great art in it, and some great typography that maintains the creepy feel, but yet you also have that government type of feeling to them. Each one of these 6 scenarios can be played with generated characters. You don't have to have pre-generated characters. They all take place right around in the 2016s or so. Okay, so reverberations. In this scenario here, I like this. This was a very straight up scenario. This involves a cho-cho drug that gets out on the streets again, and in this one, it kind of assumes that the players may have worked with this drug in the past and whatnot. So what happens is a group of drug dealers just start disappearing, everybody who is using this particular drug. And long story short, what winds up happening is that the drug that they wind up taking opens up their consciousness so much to where they almost travel along planar existence, and they attract the attention of what is basically a hound of Tindalos. Their take on the Hound is very different. One of the things Delta Green does do is it kind of gets a alternate spin on classic Cthulhu creatures. For instance, when you're reading the scenario, you're reading, it's a hound and everything, and it's made up of little broken shards of dimensional vortex, and it actually uses these and cuts its victims up and everything. So it's not exactly like the classical Hound of Tindalos from 1920s Cthulhu, but it's basically the same creature. It manifests itself out of right angles and what have you. So this scenario, they follow a very brief trail to figure out what's happening to these missing drug dealers, and what's happening is they're arousing the attention of a Hound of Tindalos, who winds up killing them and dragging them off through right angles and whatnot. So that is, and the climax of this is when the characters confront the Hound and have to try and defeat it. I liked this scenario, but it's very straightforward. So to me, it was a very A, B, and C, and so there wasn't a lot of intrigue in it, and I didn't like the setup for it. I think I might do something a little bit different in the setup, but I do like the premise that people are taking this drug that opens their consciousness, that allows them to see plane traveling entities, and again, the idea that they attract a hound of Tindalis is a pretty cool idea. Viscid. This one's really, really interesting. So in this one here, it's also very, very complicated. And that's one of the things. This was one of my favorite scenarios in the book here, but it also gets very, very complicated with some very it gets very, very, very complicated with some major characters from the original book in it and everything. But in Visit, basically there is a guy that is one of the major players in the Delta Green lore, and he's a ex-Majestic 12 guy, and he has to take a specific drug in order to keep himself immortal. Well, this drug itself, basically what it is it's almost like a proto-ectoplasmic type of material that contains the soul and the awareness of this Air Force lieutenant. So he has this guy in suburban, I think it's Washington, who winds up manufacturing the stuff for him. And what he winds up doing is that the doctor that's manufacturing these pills for him to keep him alive, using this protoplasmic type of matter, which contains the awareness of this Air Force lieutenant who allowed himself to be tested with it, it winds up becoming animate, and it winds up killing the dude that's preparing the drug. And then what it does is it uses almost like The Thing, from like John Carpenter's The Thing, where it absorbs biological material from the guy that it kills, from certain, like there's a scene where it harvests some corpses from a morgue. It actually uses a cat in certain parts, and what happens is that as this like infection spreads, a number of these, more than one of these creatures, wind up becoming aware, and it thinks that it is this Air Force lieutenant from 20 years ago. And this Air Force lieutenant has only one thing on his mind, and he wants to reunite himself with his wife and his child. So inevitably, this trail of destruction is leading, as these things are they're killing people, and they're going into... Well, there's one where an airplane crash is caused that had some of it on board, and it's in a national park and everything. And that was such a really cool concept too. One of the corpses had died in the front yard, and these crows were eating on it, and the crows actually wind up getting infected, and the characters see one of the crows with like a finger, and when you it was a really cool idea, is when you do the fingerprint, if the characters manage to capture the crow and they run the fingerprint, they actually find that it comes back to this Air Force lieutenant. It was very cool. So the creature, though, the protoplasmic, almost like Shoggoth-like Air Force lieutenant is making his way all the way across the country. All of them are competing, like going towards the same location, towards their last known location of his wife, who's now, of course, 20 years older, and his son is grown up and everything. And when it gets there, they actually attack each other, and then they try and merge with, absorb the wife and the son, and that's where the climax happens. And since each one of these creatures thinks it's the Air Force lieutenant, they all are in competition, so they all start fighting each other, and some of them have grown very big by the time they get there. It's an absolutely awesome scenario. The thing that I really liked about it is it's genuinely creepy. We have the mystery is very fun for them to fill out. The only thing that I could be critical about it is that it gets very complicated on who knows who, and they find out that this guy is this character, and there's a very complicated web that if your characters are not really into the lore of Delta Green, then it's going to fly right over their head, and the significance of the different characters might get past them. But ultimately, they wind up getting themselves on board this freight train of destruction as it's coming down, and they have to hopefully rescue the wife and the child at the very end of the scenario. It was genuinely disturbing and creepy. This was magnificent scenario. I like that one. Okay, music from a darkened room. I am going to be honest with you. This is a haunted house scenario, and this was one that bothered me so much when I read it that it wound up having me look over my shoulder at night when after my family had gone to bed. I was sitting in a quiet room all by myself. This one really creeped me out in the best way. I absolutely think this is a masterpiece. This scenario starts with a Delta Green agent who is an FBI agent winds up killing himself in this haunted house, and in this house, right? And the players their cell gets activated to kind of track down and figure out why he was in this house and why he did, what was this sudden interest that he had in this house. And then they kind of see his descent into madness and his obsession with the house. And they find out that there are all these other families and everything that have died in the house generationally. And it is a fantastic scenario. And what's really creepy about it, what really bothered me, is that the way that, so spoiler alert, the driving force behind it is there is a female in the house who lived in the house. I think it was at the turn of the century or whatnot. I can't remember. It's been it's been at least a week or so since I've read the scenario, but she had become very sick, and a nurse had come in and had an older woman had come in to take care of her, who was really like a witch. And this witch used these healing powers in order to bring her and nurse her back to health. And so she recovered from being terminally ill. And then both the witch and the woman, their souls kind of get trapped into the house. And the only thing that kind of relieves them from really the woman herself, not the witch, that relieves her is just feeling the warmth of the living being in the house with her, and so she becomes obsessed with anyone who's in the home itself. Then everyone who dies in the home gets trapped in the home too, and all of the spirits can watch the living and interact with the living through the reflections in the house. Mirrors, glass, wherever there's a reflection, there's a chance that the characters can look through and see these previous victims who are just like this empathetic, just radiance of suffering and sorrow, and it overcomes it was the idea of just looking in a mirror and having these and there's all these is brilliantly written with these scripted events happening, especially ones with the damn children, where there's like children that are interacting with them, and freaking creepy tricycles and stuff like that. Oh, it was so good. This was damn it, now I'm not going to sleep tonight again. This was a great scenario, and just burning down the house is not going to work because they actually have to get rid of the evil. The only complaint I have about this one is that I would the way for them to get rid of it was a little bit extreme for me. it wound up they would have to murder another person in order to complete a ritual that would exorcise the house. And I think most Delta Green characters would have an issue with that. And a lot of my players would have an issue with that too, of murdering an innocent person. Maybe they could find someone who's not innocent, but I may give them, I think that's the two ways that you can do it, is either you have to go through a ritual where you actually murder a person to get the spirit to leave, or you have to, and burning it down does not work. Or if they know how to construct an elder sign, that's another way that they can do it and everything. But this scenario was so flippin' cool. If there's one thing that Call of Cthulhu, and then the Dark Man, the Witch, actually worships Nyarlathotep, and he actually makes an appearance at the end of the scenario as you're banishing, as you're cleansing the home there and stuff. So very, very, very good scenario. I loved it. Extremophilia, it was interesting. It's funny because my 16-year-old had said, "This was the best one, Dad. This one was really good." I liked it. It was good, but basically, I'll sum it up where there's a research area that is in rural Montana, and a bunch of people start getting sick there, almost like with this fungal type of sickness, and it spreads around to the local population. And as you get sicker and sicker, you start growing these odd, like almost like spore-like growths all over you, and your characters actually start having weird visions and descending into madness as this sickness happens. And then what winds up happening is the infected people, they either die or they kind of survive. And there was this creepy birth where a pregnant woman had caught it and everything, and her baby becomes very animated and infected, and also, zero sanity, possessed, Cthulhu mythos influenced. And what winds up happening is that the infected people go up to the top of Devil's Tower in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind-esque climax, and who comes flying out of the heavens to go ahead and greet them and carry them off happily? It's the Migo. And so it's a great opportunity to... The Migo, the way the Migo are portrayed in this scenario are much more potent and capable than the way they are portrayed in the Call of Cthulhu rules. And I like his interpretation of how I'm sorry about the glare. I always have this problem at my house. I'm sorry. It's because I got a lot of light. But I love his interpretation of Migo. It's very, very cool take on it. But so it ends with a climactic battle with the Migo in the end of the scenario. And I will tell you that if the characters are not well armed and if they are not prepared, that climax is going to go very, very, very poorly of them. Again, the Migo are terrifyingly competent. Okay, so the Star Chamber. This one was pretty interesting. I liked the concept of this, and in the concept of this one does use pre-generated characters for half the scenario. So here's the concept. The concept is that the players, with their characters, with their characters that they made, they are brought together for like a hearing on this botched Delta Green operation, and they have to evaluate whether or not the team has been compromised and who's at fault, and whether or not they have to basically liquidate the team. And what's really cool about this one, is a very interesting concept about this scenario, is that you play it where one scene is being played where the players are questioning the agents, then the scenario actually goes in a flashback. So they go into a flashback, and then they're actually role-playing the characters that they're interrogating, which I thought was a pretty interesting concept. It kind of works. There's not a lot of mystery in it because they know kind of what's going to happen. So they get their pre-generated, they get the characters that from the botch operation. Everyone has to play somebody. They know who's going to live and who's going to die because everyone's there at the end. But playing out the scenario is actually pretty kind of cool. It appears like it's cool. I haven't ran it yet. The only complaint I would have on it is that the operation itself was pretty straightforward. Chochos in the jungle doing devil stuff they're not supposed to do, and go out there and stop them. And then one of the characters goes mad, and really I didn't, for the level of her madness, the actual scenario wasn't as disturbing or crazy enough to do that. So the real gem in this scenario, I think, is the interrogation of the team and moving back and forth. But the actual operation itself, I thought, was very straightforward, but maybe even a little bland for my tastes. I'm not a huge Cho-Cho story arc fan and everything, so I didn't, and especially after reading from the first one, where the Cho-Chos are making drugs in the modern, having another Cho-Cho like inspired scenario was like, okay. So I was not a. This one was very interesting with the premise, but the actual scenario was really a straight up. There's like a straight up gun battle in it. So it was okay. I mean, this one was interesting. I can't wait to play. I'm more interested in playing out the hearing than the actual field op itself. So, okay, Observer Effect. This is our last one here. Okay, so I was reading Observer Effect, and I am not a left-brained person. I am a right-brained person. I'm a creator and a storyteller. I don't, one of the reasons why I like free league games so much is that there's not a lot of math and rules and stuff with them, and it just seems to run smoothly, okay? So when I started reading Observer Effect, it's about this hollow beam array that goes online, and this thing basically contacts Azathoth, and it destroys the world. And there's leaping across several realities and whatnot, and at first it became very confusing to me. I was having, and there's a lot of science in it, a lot of physics, a lot of science, and the players actually come in as, I think, Department of Energy inspectors. And I was like going, meh. I was just kind of reading it, I was not excited about it. I was just kind of reading it, trying to get through it. And then about 3/4 of the way, it was like the friggin' light came on to me. I was like, oh my God, this scenario is absolutely brilliant. I told my son about this scenario here, and he just got giddy and started laughing. He said it was such a cool idea. So what happens is that the players basically, they have this they wake up screaming at 10 a.m. on, let's call it D-Day, right? And they get their mission, and they the mission is that they get a call about an hour later, and they say, hey, you got to meet for a briefing at 3:00. There's a problem. It's a hollow beam array. We're not really sure. There may be some sort of mythos event that's happening there, and they never really explain to the characters why they need to go out to the hollow beam array or what to expect. And then what winds up happening is the characters go out there, they kind of look for clues and what have you, but the hollow beam array goes off, contacts Azathoth, and winds up killing everyone. It destroys the world. And then the characters wake up screaming, but this time they wake up screaming at like 12:30, right? And they don't have perfect recollection, but there's flashes. So you have to have good players that aren't going to metagame and everything. And then they have until it's something like 8 p.m. is when it goes off and when it contacts Azathoth. And they have till 8 p.m. the next day in order to figure it out. And inevitably, it will end with them contacting Azathoth and wind up destroying the world again. And then now they're closer, and they have less and less time each time that this loop in reality happens before they figure out how to stop the beam from contacting Azathoth. It is freaking so cool. It was really, really well done. There's a lot of madness in it, and there is and it's not so easy that, we just flip the switch and turn it off, or we just smash it and everything. The problem is that half of the research staff at the plant have already been infected by madness and obsession with Azathoth, where once the players do figure out what needs to happen, they're not going to just roll over and let the players destroy the array. So very, very, very great scenario. probably my second favorite scenario in the book here. And again, I read the first, 10, 15 pages of it, and I was bored. I was like going, oh my gosh, I just need to make it through this. And then once I figured out what was going on, it's so cool. This was a really cool thing too. This is a great play aid for your players where it talks about their priorities. These are the agent's standing orders, whether they're part of the program or whether they're part of the Outlaws. And it talks about what you give this to them every single mission before each mission, and these are their priorities in order of what they do. And the number one thing, as you can see, is stop the incursion, obscure the incursion, minimizing public awareness, and then obscure Delta Green's involvement, secure any advanced technology which can assist Delta Green in their future ops, and then the fifth priority is save lives. So it's kind of like looking at the big picture. I thought that was really cool. And then, throughout the book itself too, you have a number of photos and handouts that are easily copied, and the way that they have these neat little the charts, and they have great little this is like post-it notes that they actually find. It's so well done. They do a really great job. So anyway, that is A Night at the Opera. I highly recommend it. It's a good starting place for beginning GMs to go with Delta Green. Like I have said in the past, most of the time when I buy adventures, I have the meat and potatoes of what I'm looking for, but I really wind up finding myself adding a lot to make things creepy. There are some things that I would do some minor tweaks in these to make them more towards my GM style and my players, their expectations. But right out of the box, these are genuinely creepy, keep you up at night scenarios. It's very well done. Again, I still feel like I need to say it. Obviously, if you have that group that has sensitivities or they are not into disturbing content, this is not the game for them. These are really disturbing scenarios. They're scary, but they are just extremely well written, extremely well done. Highly recommend going out and picking this up. It's definitely going to be worth your money. Anyway, so listen, this is Deeb. If you are a GM and you have read A Night at the Opera, then by all means, write down in the comments. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know which scenario was your favorite. My favorite is probably the haunted house one, and then my second favorite being the one with the hollow beam array. I thought that was just a really cool scenario. So, in the meantime, this is Deeb. I've been talking to you guys so much, I haven't had any of my wine. I'm going to drink my wine, and then I'm going to bed. Until then, I'll see you all across the interweb. Slap me a like, give me a subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will see you guys on cyberspace. This is Deeb, out.